All right, let's just jump right into this. Have you ever wondered if the folks who lived thousands of years ago were actually, well, better at being human than we are right now? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How on earth could they be? I mean, we've got smartphones, we've got space travel, global supply chains, the whole shebang. But I'm not talking about being smarter with tech or having more money or being more advanced. I'm talking about being better at actually living. Because if you look at the data, the everyday reality is that modern humans are more anxious, distracted, isolated, and unhealthy than we have ever been. Meanwhile, ancient civilizations survived absolutely brutal climates. They built these impossible monuments, formed unbreakable communities, and they lived with this profound sense of purpose that a lot of us today are just desperately searching for. When we picture ancient people, our minds usually jump straight to, primitive lives filled with constant struggle and misery. And yeah, to be totally fair, they completely lacked modern medicine, electricity, the internet. Life back then was undeniably brutal a lot of the time. But anthropologists and psychologists are increasingly pointing out that we might have made a massive trade-off. We essentially sacrificed fundamental parts of our mental and physical well-being just in exchange for sheer convenience. In some incredibly critical ways, ancient people actually understood human nature way better than modern civilization does. Their lives were slower, heavily physical, intensely social, and intimately connected to the world around them. So, to map this out, we're going to look at 4 key areas. Number 1, the loss of tribe. 2, how we're disconnected from the physical. 3, the overwhelmed modern mind. And 4, building things to last. Let's start with section 1, the loss of tribe, and how we traded community for hyper-independence. For literally almost all of human history, your identity and your very survival were totally wrapped up in the people around you. Ancient humans rarely, if ever, lived alone. Your survival absolutely depended on the tribe. You hunted together, you raised your kids together, cooked together, watched each other's backs. Your community literally gave you your identity. Fast forward to today, and we flip this completely upside down. Millions of us live in these massive cities, surrounded by crowds of people, and yet we feel incredibly isolated. We lean so hard into hyper-independence. Sure, we have social media giving us this illusion of connection, but we've mostly traded real physical human interaction for endless scrolling. Ancient people didn't have followers, right? They had neighbors they literally relied on to stay alive. And the biological fallout from this shift? It is staggering. Studies are now showing that loneliness can be as dangerous to our health as smoking. Just think about that for a second. That is a profound biological mismatch. Human beings literally evolved to exist inside tight-knit communities. So modern loneliness isn't just a bummer of a feeling. It's actual physiological proof that we've abandoned something fundamentally essential to our survival as a species. So how did they maintain those deep connections? Well, through rituals. Ancient societies were anchored by deeply embedded human rituals. We're talking shared meals, seasonal festivals, coming-of-age rites, oral storytelling traditions around a fire. These weren't just for fun. They were the glue. They provided crucial emotional stability. They gave people a structured way to process grief, to celebrate milestones, and to build a rock-solid sense of belonging. Modern culture, on the flip side, has basically gutted a lot of these, usually prioritizing pure productivity over actual meaning. Without those symbolic moments, life might be super efficient, but it often just ends up feeling emotionally hollow. So we can clearly see the social cost, but what about our physical bodies? How does our modern physical reality actually stack up against our ancient biological design? That brings us to section 2, disconnected from the physical, where movement and nature were a way of life. Think about this. For our ancestors, exercise and nature weren't things you had to squeeze into an overcrowded calendar. Ancient humans did not work out. That whole concept would have seemed completely absurd to them. Movement was just life itself. Hunter-gatherers walked massive distances every single day. Farmers lifted, climbed, carried, and built things with their bare hands. Their bodies were constantly adapting to real-world, varied movement. Now compare that to us. We drive to work, we sit hunched over at desks all day, we scroll on our phones on the couch. And then we try to fix all of that by forcing ourselves into artificial gym routines for an hour, just trying to compensate for a lifestyle our bodies were literally never built for. It all boils down to this. The human body evolved for motion, but modern life has effectively engineered motion entirely out of existence. Ancient folks were naturally fit just because moving was unavoidable, and the results are pretty hard to argue with. Many ancient populations had significantly lower obesity rates, way better posture, and incredible endurance, all without spending a dime on a fitness industry. And all that physical movement was intimately tied to the environment. Ancient humans deeply understood the natural world because, well, they had to. They tracked the seasons, weather patterns, the stars, the rivers. Nature was their constant, everyday reality. Today, we spend the vast majority of our lives completely indoors, soaking up artificial light, totally cut off from the very environment that shaped our species. For a lot of us, we experience nature mostly as a digital screensaver. And man, this disconnect really matters. When we distance ourselves from nature, we lose out on some profound biological benefits. Research consistently backs this up. Spending time in nature actively reduces stress. It lowers anxiety, decreases depression, and even reduces physical inflammation in the body. Ancient humans got all of these incredible mental and physical health perks every single day just by waking up and existing. The further we advance technologically, the further we drift from the exact environment that optimized our brains for hundreds of thousands of years. Which definitely begs a pretty massive question. What exactly did we trade away for all this modern convenience? The physical costs are pretty obvious, but the psychological costs, they might be even heavier. Let's explore that in Section 3, The Overwhelmed Modern Mind, covering distraction, resilience, and presence. Right now, our brains are fundamentally failing to cope with the modern environment we've constructed. Take a look at the modern information diet. 24/7 news, pings, notifications, targeted ads, messages, algorithms, just an endless fire hose of content. The average person today consumes more information in a single day than ancient humans probably encountered in months. Our brains are just totally overwhelmed. We've got these glowing rectangles constantly competing to hijack our dopamine pathways. Ancient humans lived in an information landscape that their minds could actually process. When they sat around a fire, their attention was completely uninterrupted. They were fully there. Modern tech, on the other hand, literally profits off our constant distraction. And because of all this nonstop stimulation, we end up living almost entirely in what psychologists call psychological time. Basically, that means our minds are stuck in the past, replaying conversations, stewing over regrets, or we're living in the future, worrying about what's next, or endlessly chasing the next big goal. We're everywhere except the present reality. Ancient life absolutely forced you into the present. If you were hunting, or crossing dangerous terrain, or just trying to survive a harsh winter, your attention had to be rooted in the now. By constantly living in psychological time, we endure this permanent state of low-grade stress. It's wildly ironic, but all of our civilization's comforts have actually made it so much harder to just feel at peace. And this creates a massive gap in how we handle adversity. Look, ancient life was inherently hard. People faced serious danger and hardship on a regular basis. But that daily struggle naturally built up an incredible amount of psychological resilience, patience, and adaptability. Our modern mindset? It is entirely obsessed with eliminating discomfort. Food gets delivered to our door in minutes. The entertainment never ever stops. We're perfectly climate controlled. But here's the catch. Human beings actually grow through challenge. By constantly dodging discomfort, modern society is unintentionally breeding a whole lot of anxiety and fragility. Our minds evolved to overcome obstacles, not to run away from them. Which leads us to our final point, Section 4. Building things to last, and the philosophy of permanence. Let's step back and look at the real big picture for a second. Think about what ancient civilizations actually left behind. Temples, aqueducts, road systems, these incredible monuments, many of which are literally still standing thousands of years later. Ancient builders thought in terms of generations. They deeply valued legacy and longevity. Now look at modern culture. We mass-produce items specifically designed to be disposable. Things are meant to break quickly just so you have to go out and buy the newest version. Modern companies don't think in generations, they think in financial quarters. We idolize speed and constant replacement over anything that actually lasts. And here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. A disposable culture doesn't just stop at cheap physical products. That mindset bleeds into literally everything we do. It affects how we treat our relationships, how we manage our own attention spans, and even how we view our very identities. When everything around you is temporary and totally replaceable, the entire human experience starts to feel just a little bit disposable too. So, if we pull all of this together, what does the ancient blueprint actually look like? It really boils down to a few core truths that our ancestors just naturally understood, but that we've kind of forgotten. Number one, humans need real community. We need physical movement. We need deep meaning. We need a connection to nature. We actually need some level of struggle to build up our resilience.
and we desperately need to learn how to live in the present moment.
We have this really stubborn habit of assuming that newer automatically means better. But while technology undeniably solved a ton of external problems, it also created a whole host of internal ones that our ancestors almost rarely faced. History really proves that reality is way more complicated than just a straight line of progress. Sure, we conquered the elements, but we somehow managed to create a crisis of the mind in the process. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if progress isn't just about becoming more technologically advanced? What if true progress is actually about remembering what humans were never supposed to lose in the first place? Think about how that applies to your own daily life. If this explainer shifted how you view the ancient world, absolutely make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future deep dives into the hidden truths of modern life. Because honestly, sometimes the future makes a whole lot more sense when you take a second to look backward. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.